This is the second video in the series. Let's see what Danny has to say about free markets, guerrilla warfare, and centralization versus decentralization.
Collectivism used to be just kind of a boogeyman, right? It was a definitely bad thing that everyone opposed, and individualism was the good thing that everyone supported. I think the main reason that we've seen a change in that is because people are no longer just sort of responding to the obviously collectivist social justice warriors. They're starting to discuss more branched out issues, and I think that they didn't really think through what individualism and collectivism really means. And so when the topic is no longer these obviously wrong people, social justice warriors, they no longer really have such a grounded idea of why they'd call themselves an individualist, and many of them no longer do. A lot of people are starting to say, well, you know what? The world is just tribalizing. People are forming groups. We can't, as atomized individuals, not working together, not having a common sense of identity, not having a common cause, we can't hope to compete with them. So therefore, we're going to need to become collectivists too. Now, first of all, I should point out that this charge that individuals, all atomized and just working for their own purposes, are never going to be as successful as a cohesive collective is just plain wrong a lot of the time. For example, consider guerrilla warfare tactics. Often a decentralized force, one without a cohesive command structure, is going to be more effective and more efficient than a more regimented, more collectivist in this sense, force. The reason, of course, being that the individuals, the so-called atomized individuals, can be far more adaptive to their current circumstances.
The debate between collectivism and individualism is not a debate about centralization and decentralization. While Danny appears to only be making a sparsely identical example and appears to know that to be the case, such false equivalence is often seen on the internet. In fact, in one sense, centralization is what actually promotes individualism. Imagine, for example, USA as instead of as it is in 2018 was just a region with several Native American and Mesoamerican tribes. Can one say with confidence that the individuals from different tribes would view each other as more of individuals rather than as groups? A lot more than how one person from a US state would view another, even if states are thousands of miles away? A common identity that is powerful enough for groups to not mind difference in group characteristics has been behind most of the consolidation of people of varying beliefs, biology, and character. That common identity allows people to view each other as part of a same group, and then they can better treat them as individuals rather than a collective because they are one of their own. The guerrilla army, while decentralized, is committed to a common identity and a common goal. In fact, that feeling must be so strong and the group cohesion and trust must be so high that one group of people would be willing to put themselves on varying degrees of risk before other group because they are assured that even if they die, the other group, out of some collective sense of cause, would continue the fight and their deaths would not be in vain.
Or consider the free market. Consider the fact that individuals pursuing their own self-interests has been shown to be a far more productive way of producing everything that a society needs than attempting some kind of top-down, planned economy. So it's actually not true that a cohesive collective will necessarily outcompete a set of atomized individuals.
The free market case is an interesting one. The reason why the success of individualism over collectivism shines in some cases is because the way of measuring that success is just by the aggregation of successes of each of the individuals. Thus, when each individual maximizes his own potential, the overall potential of the system is very likely to maximize. But if one is to measure success of the group in other ways, one may find himself rejected more often with individualism. For example, assume that you are a teacher of a class of kindergartners. One day, you decide to give them a new task. You divide the class of 20 kids into two groups of 10 each and take them to a sand pit and ask them to collect sand using shovels in a bucket. Whichever group collects largest amount of sand in the given time would be declared a winner and given a prize. Now, in what conditions it is very likely that a group would collect more sand? Assuming that average potential of both groups in collecting sand is equal, by adopting a simple policy in which each kid tries to maximize his sand collection would more than likely improve the group collection as a whole, and that is because the way group success is defined. It is merely an aggregation of individual successes. But if one adopts another measure in which he measures things that have to do more with the interrelational component between different kids, one may arrive at a different answer. Let us assume that in that case, success is measured instead by placing a condition that whichever group would have lower standard deviation from the mean in amount of sand collected within the members of the same group would be the winner. This would be a measure of overall group identity. In this case, the varying ability of different people to collect sand may mean that maximization of individual successes may lead to loss of prize. However, forcing each student to collect a specific amount of sand would help the group in claiming the prize. Now, one may say that second success is inconsequential and has no real world importance. However, even if that is true, that is how many on the left would measure success, and as long as they continue to exist, such success would always be in the political discussion and would thus be always politically relevant.
In fact, a lot of the time it seems to be exactly the opposite way around, for obvious reasons. A set of individuals, each pursuing their own self-interests and each doing what they believe is best in each situation, is going to be far more dynamic and adaptive to any new circumstances and are going to be able to deal with far more complex situations than any specific group would ever be able to get their heads around, since each individual only needs to get his head around a small piece of it.
That is true, however, that is not just a beneficial thing without a cost. There is a cost to it, the cost of inconsistency. As each individual tries to solve the problem in his own way, one may rapidly see rise of subcultural ethics and morality. Different places would have different moral codes, and these may also vary across time. One of the things is what we see today, where we are unsure as to what can get a particular person deplatformed. Different groups and platforms have a different understanding of what constitutes an adequate transgression, and that is also applied differently based on what one perceives to be the individual circumstance. While in one case, a person might be removed for a small infraction to deal with a major problem, in another case, a person may retain his place on platform for a much larger offense due to the fact that it may be a smaller problem in the eyes of the ones making the decision. Hence, the laws of a common fabric ensures people are at mercy of each other and good faith. For any lack of good faith may instead cause one's fortunes to be decimated because of the public outrage over exactly same thing that other people do. So much for the freedom.